All right, good day, class. Hope everybody's enjoying their day so far. Um, this week we're going to cover project procurement management. Okay, and so part of the um, project management piece is procuring all the resources that you need, and specifically in an IT project, and make sure you have everything you need to get the job done, and kind of figuring out what the lead times are on certain things, and the resources that are going to be necessary in order for you to, kind of allocate to different folks, whether that be you have to procure human resources, you have to outsource people or work, right? And so procurement is a huge part of project management. All right, and objectives for this session. Okay. All right. So when we talk about procurement, we're really talking about acquiring goods or services from outside source, okay? It's estimated that global IT industry has a value of about $3.7 trillion, okay? And some companies outsource a lot of their stuff as far as maybe HR and some accounting things. But most companies, for the most part, try to keep that at a minimum because the more you outsource, the less control you have. Although it may be a cost savings, you lose some of the ability to, kind of pivot quickly and to make decisions very rapidly because, the actual function is no longer within your purview. It's in a third party's hands. So you got to, make sure that that third party is diligent and doing their job and always attentive to what's going on in your particular area or arena. So, it all depends on the company and what the particular thing they're outsourcing. But as you can see from the note here, GM recently announced plans to switch from outsourcing 90% of IT service to only 10%. So basically, they're going to make a large investment into their IT infrastructure so that it's internal to them and not external. And that alleviates, for the most part, mitigates the possibility of, hacking and compromising the database, which has, consumer information and other proprietary things that they don't want getting out. So it's easier to manage if it's internal and not external to the company. Globally, we do a lot of urban onshoring, right? And so we were doing a lot of offshoring, okay, which means that we were sending jobs and functions, outside of the US, okay? But now we're doing urban onshoring, meaning that we're trying to bring them back um, due to the fact that, we are somewhat lagging behind other countries in technology and innovation. We are trying to bring back some of that stuff home, and I say home, I mean the US, in order to cultivate and to grow our own population of folks, in technology, training, and that kind of thing, right? Infrastructure, and also to our part in the noise. Also to stimulate the economy and also provide jobs for, our labor force, okay? And so instead of, sending that stuff out to maybe Malaysia or Taiwan or the Philippines, the US is keeping that stuff home and uh, facilitating those functions internally or outsourcing domestically. Retailer Zulily develops software in-house to meet their needs for speed and innovation. All right. Proprietary algorithms track customers and make adjustments to meet changing consumer demand preferences. Excuse me. All right. And so Zulily, decided to bring things in-house by offshoring them. And so with that, they were able to, start to really customize or tailor emails and certain marketing aspects that could be more focused on the customer's individual preferences and how their buying behaviors or purchasing behaviors. Okay. Now, why outsource? Right. Really, for the majority of the companies, it's about getting access to certain skills and technology. Like I mentioned before, the United States is somewhat behind when it comes to technology as compared to other countries. And so it makes sense for us to go out and to tap into um, other, areas that have a pool of people that are talented, that are skilled, and have the requisite requirements to work. Okay? And I'm just talking globally, even domestically, right? It's about getting the right people and accessing the skills and technology that are out there, right? Another thing with outsourcing is that you can reduce both fixed and recurrent costs, okay? Um, and the thing is that because you're paying a service fee sort of to whoever is doing the work for you, it's somewhat predictable in the sense that, okay, you have a fee that you know is coming, is a current fee, but also is fixed and it doesn't change, right? And there may be some additional costs that go with the actual execution of whatever function it is, but that is not up the problem of the company that's getting the services, all right? It's the problem of the company that's providing the services, right? They provide a certain fee, and whatever comes with that, they provide a certain service, excuse me, and then we pay them, right? It's kind of like you have your phone, you pay a fee, right, to the phone company, and what happens in the background is of none of your concern. What cost that it takes to operate and all that, it has no bearing on you. You just know that you pay for a service and you get that service, and you have a fixed cost for the most part. Okay. Allows the client organization to focus on its core business, right? So we don't have to worry about doing other things. We can just focus on what we do. As far as operations go, and not have to worry about some of the administrative things that come along with doing everything internally. Provides flexibility and increases accountability. Right, and increasing accountability in the sense that you know exactly where to go if there's a problem, right? Because you know who you outsourced it to, and you can go to that company, and you usually have a representative, a direct representative that is going to be handling your account and dealing with any issues that you have, so you can get things rectified pretty quickly. Because the companies don't want you to be, unhappy. They want to keep you content and satisfied. So they're going to make sure that there's a specific portfolio manager or some manager who's taking care of those businesses for you. Okay. Uh, 2011, New York's mayor, Michael Bloomberg, all right, acknowledged the City Hall had mismanaged its major IT projects involved to improve their oversight. All right. So they went over budget quite a bit. All right. Said the $700 million price tag for the city time payroll was inflated by fraud, and the mayor demanded $600 million back from the main contractor, which is one of the things you have to worry about, right? You have to worry about whether or not the contractor is inflating the cost and adding in monies that really, are double the industry standards or whatever the market is calling for. Okay. And then sometimes you just have cost overruns, as in the case of excuse me, the automated personnel system, NICAPS. They were budgeted for 66 million, and they went over by more than $300 million. And so, because again, outsourcing it, you lose a lot of control, and you're not really sure about what's going on with all the decision making specifically related to that project or the management of that particular function. Project procurement management, acquiring goods and services for projects from outside the performing organization. Okay. And then the main processes of, project procurement management are planning, procurement management, determining what to procure and when and how to do it, conducting procurements, obtaining seller responses, selecting sellers, and awarding contracts, and controlling procurements, managing relations with sellers, monitoring contract performance, making changes as needed, and closing out contracts. Okay. Just a visual depiction, right, of the process itself, right, and kind of the subset task and responsibilities and things that go on within those particular processes. All right. Let's talk about planning procurement management, right? Identify which product needs can best be met by using product service outside the organization, right? So basically, you have to figure out whether or not you want to procure, right? Um, services, okay? You may decide to do it internally if you have the resources, but you may decide that we don't have the resources and we're going to procure this particular function or activity, right? And then the real question is, once you figure out whether to procure or not, the real question is how to procure, what to procure, how much to procure, and when to procure it, right? And so that's all going to be based on the timeline of the project, right? Or timeline of when you need that particular function or activity complete so that it can be integrated into whatever processes or systems that the company has. An important output of this process is to make or buy decision. Excuse me. There is no need to buy any product service from an outside organization, then there is no need to perform any of the other procurement management processes, right? So if you don't have to, get the stuff, right, from outside the organization, then there's really no need, for the other processes because you're not procuring anything, okay? So basically, very straightforward, right? You got different types of contracts that can be used in different situations. Fixed price or lump sum contracts, right? Involve a fixed total price for a well-defined product or service, okay? Cost reimbursable contracts involve payment to seller for direct and indirect costs. Time material contracts, right? It's kind of a hybrid of both fixed price and cost reimbursable, and a unit price contracts require the buyer to pay the seller to determine amount per unit of service, right? And all these contracts, right? These different types of contracts, they're all used pretty heavily, and it all depends on how the company or organization wants to approach these contracts or wants to approach the procurement process, right? It depends on how much money do we have, right? How many resources do we have? And do we need to defer payment till the project's done or till the service is done? Do we need to go ahead and pay up front because it may be a cost savings or tax savings, right? So there may be some incentives as to, which will determine which contract type we use, right? So again, incentives and kind of like the goal of the project and the finances will determine what kind of contract you have. Okay. Excuse me. So it shows the contract types versus the risk, right? So as you can tell, the buyer risk is high when it's a cost plus percentage of cost, okay? But it's low for the seller. Firm fixed price is low for the buyer, but high for the seller, okay, as far as risk, okay? And that's basically because for me as the buyer, right, if the price is fixed, then that's great. I pay you up front, right? But for the seller, it's not always great because I may sell at that price today and then tomorrow something happens and bam, the price goes up, right? And so at that point, I can no longer affect the price or the cost that I quoted you, right? And so I'm pretty much stuck with anything above and beyond what I quoted you. And so it's a really high risk game when we talk about firm fixed price for the seller, right? Because once that price is locked in, we're assuming that everything that goes into providing a service, all right, completing activity is also fixed, right? All those costs that we're going to incur are also fixed, and we've determined what those costs are, in addition to adding a profit margin on top of that. And so we come to that conclusion. But if something were to happen and one of the cost increases, then we could no longer go in and pass that cost on to the buyer. Okay. Contract incentives can be extremely effective. Okay. On August 1st, 2007, tragedy struck Minneapolis, Minnesota. when a bridge, specifically I-35 West, collapsed, killing 13 motorists, injuring 150 people, and leaving a mass of concrete and steel in the river and on its banks. I remember this particular event very well. Yes, it was a while ago, but still, it was very huge catastrophe. So, there's a whole bridge, and I've been over I-35, and it's a pretty decent size, highway. All right, it's kind of like I-5, right? Just I-35. And so, it's trying to figure out, okay, how do we go about, taking care of this, right? Peter Sanderson, project manager for the joint venture of Flatiron Mesa, led his team in completing the project. Contractors earned $25 million incentive fees on top of the $234 million contract for cleaning the bridge 3 months ahead of the schedule. The Minneapolis DOT, Department of Transportation, justified the incentive payment by saying that each day the bridge was closed, it cost road users more than $400,000, right? And so, in many instances, if the company that's providing the service, the outsourced service, finishes ahead of schedule, or finishes early, or provides a product that's above and beyond, what was stipulated, right? There's typically an incentive, right, in there a lot of times to perform, for performance-based incentives, okay? And so that's very helpful in getting the job done and making sure that, the companies that are doing the work, right, they are more motivated to get the job done and done correctly in a high level because there's incentives for them, right? And if they earn $25 million in incentive fees, right, on top of the already $234 million contract, that's a lot of money, right? $25 million as an incentive, right? That can be spread throughout the company, in order to provide some, additional compensation for those contractors or that the people that are working on this particular project. Okay. Excuse me. Contract should include specific clauses taking into account issues unique to the project, right? Time and material contracts, unit price contracts can be high or low risk. Depending on the nature of the project and other contract clauses, a termination clause allows the buyer to, or supplier to end the contract, right? And so you have to be real careful when you're reading these contracts and getting ready to sign them, right? And look at, the opt-out clauses, look at any deadlines that are, any obligations that you have, right? You have to make sure that all that stuff is written into the contract, because if it's not in the contract, then it's not gonna it's not going to hold up in a legal proceeding. Okay, the contract is binding, and so so because of that, everything that you want done, any little unforeseen events that may happen need to be stipulated in the contract, right? Very what's the word, expressly, right? They need to be expressed in the contract. And so and it also needs to be, show that, you as the, buyer or the seller, know, hey, if this doesn't work out like we thought, what's my out, right? What's my termination clause? What's it say? Do I have penalties for leaving the project early, or being done, or just terminating the thing altogether, right? And so you have to make sure those things are in there. Tools and techniques for planning procurement management. All right, there's several tools and techniques that are available to help project managers and their teams in planning procurement management. Make or buy analysis, general management technique used to determine whether an organization should make or perform a particular product or service inside the organization or buy from someone else, excuse me. Again, make or buy is basically like a cost benefit analysis or break even analysis, right? Just kind of want to see, okay, the cost of making it in-house or the cost of buying it or getting it made, externally, right? And you compare those two things. And if it's cheaper for you to do it yourself, then you do that, right? But if it's cheaper for you to outsource it, then you did also. You think about, sometimes you don't want to cook dinner, right? Or you don't want to go grocery shopping. Sometimes it's cheaper to eat out for a particular meal than it is to go to the grocery store, buy the ingredients, right? Cook it yourself, right? Because you have to account for the time, right? The time also represents a certain amount of value, right? Time is valuable, right? And you're not getting paid for your services. Your payment is the final outcome, whether you're cooking something and you want to do it yourself because you think it's cheaper. It may very well be cheaper just to go out and get it and then bring it back home, price going to the grocery store, buying all the ingredients, having to make it, and then the real problem with that is that it may not turn out the way you want because it's not your particular area of expertise, right? You may have people that are familiar with the process or the activity, but it may not be, something that people are well adept at. And so you may get a subpar product. Whereas if you buy it, at least you know that you're getting a product that is of the highest quality that you can afford, that you want to spend money on, I guess. And it's from, someone that knows what they're doing, right? Expert judgment, okay. Experts from both from inside and outside an organization can provide excellent advice in planning, purchase, and acquisitions. Of course, we always want that to make sure that we understand, hey, what the factors or the criteria are, if we're going to go internal, external, or outsource, right? Market research, many potential suppliers are often available for goods and services. So the project team must choose suppliers carefully, right? So there's a lot of suppliers out there, right? The key is to go out, evaluate the suppliers as far as their, if they're manufacturing it on site, if they're not manufacturing on site, where are they manufacturing? Who are they sourcing their product from? The materials that are being used, the supplies track record as far as like quality control, and also their payment track, right? Do they pay their bills on time, right? It may not seem like something that's important to you, but it is, because if they don't pay their bills on time, that means they don't get the material they need to do the job that you need them to do, right? And so it's important that they also have a reputable and good track record as far as payments and services. Okay. Excuse me. The procurement management plan, right, describes how the procurement process will be managed, from developing documentation, making outside purchase or acquisition to contract closure. Okay. Contents varies based on project needs. All right, so now we're going to jump into a statement of work, right? And the statement of work is basically a description of the work required for the procurement. And you'll hear SAL or SOW. And basically, it's the main part of the contract, okay? And really, its main part, what we call an RFP, request for proposal, or it might be an RFQ, request for quote, right? But if we are soliciting, some services, right, then we need to have the statement of work. And the statement of work is going to describe only the work required for that particular contract, right? And it's called a contract statement of work, okay? Contract SOW or SAL is a type of scope statement. A good statement of work gives bidders a better understanding of the buyer's expectations, right? So statement of work is very detailed, outlines in general and specific terms as to what it is that we're looking to get done, right? And the statement of work, includes the scope, includes the resources, includes all the things that, a project manager would need to look at, or someone providing the service, they would need to see to make sure that they could provide that particular service to the company, right? And so statement of work is extremely important. Right. And so here's your statement of work. Here's an example. Okay. As you can tell, the scope of work, location of work. And this is a very, this is just an example. It's very short. The statement of work is usually very, very long. And like I said, it's the major part of any RFP or RFQ contract, preliminary contract ongoings. Okay. Procurement of bid documents, all right. Request for proposals, as I mentioned before, used to solicit proposals from prospective sellers. Proposal document prepared by a seller when there are different approaches for meeting buyer demands. Then you have requests for quotes or RFQ. Used to solicit quotes or bids from prospective suppliers, right? A bid, also called a tender or quote, is a document prepared by sellers providing pricing for standard items that have been clearly defined by the buyer, okay? So, so you can tell the RFP, hey, it's looking for, hey, give me your approach, give me what, tell me what you can do as far as addressing my needs. And then request for quote is really about how much is it going to cost me, okay? Like, what's the pricing for what you're going to give me? And then it'll be more itemized, whereas the proposal, will be more written, will have a lot more background, more detail about what it is they can do to specifically address each particular thing that you're trying to do, right? Examples from a real RFP, government agencies are often required to make procurement information open to the public, right? And so whenever the government is looking for services to be done or they're outsourcing stuff, they put it out in the bidding process for the most part, right? And so the contracting officer for the organization or for the entity, right, will get a requirement from whatever department within that entity, and then once they get a requirement, they'll take a look at it and make sure that that particular entity has provided some kind of statement of work or some kind of deep information so that they can create and start a RFP or RFQ, whichever one they need. Right. And then once the contracting officer has that done, ready to go, they will send it out, and it has, depending on what it is, it goes out to the public because of its government funds, that means it's the people's money. And so it has to go out into the public, and any company can bid on it. Okay. There's a few other things you have to do. You got to get a cage number, which is kind of a number that they used to track you as an entity, and it kind of gives you approval to say, yes, you've been vetted, and that you've been cleared to even, put a submission in for the RFP for this particular job. But the whole, process itself is public, and as long as you have, a company, you can apply or submit an RFP to or response to the RFP from the government. Okay. Source selection criteria. It's important to prepare some form of evaluation criteria, preferably before issuing a formal RFP or RFQ. Right? Organizations use criteria to rate or score proposals, and they often assign a weight to each criteria that indicates an importance. Right. So again, once you put the RFP out, right, how are you going to evaluate whether or not that person or that company can provide the services that you're looking for, right? So you have to have some evaluation process, right? Some scoring method in which you decide, okay, you prioritize maybe the top 4 things that you want, and you give them a weight and say, this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, number 4, and then when the companies submit their responses to RFP, then you kind of look at one and say, okay, this company is strong in providing service for number 1, but they're not so much in number 2. But we need number 1 done, so we kind of have to move them out, right? They kind of fall to the side where this other company may provide 1 and 2 and 3 at a high level, so you may want to bump them up and make them the priority as far as the company you're going to go with for the outsourcing. Beware of proposals that look good on paper, right? Be sure to evaluate factors such as past performance and management approach. As I said earlier, it's important that when you do, screen companies, right, the suppliers or whoever it is that you're going to, or the vendors that you're going to, send RFPs to, excuse me, that you really look at their track record, their history, and hopefully they have a history. Sometimes you have a situation where you have a vendor that it's their first time, they've never actually gotten an RFP or done business with the government or done business in general. And so they don't really have any history to go on, but the company might be, you know, they may have done smaller projects, or maybe they have a good reputation, or their products are very, very reliable and sound in general. And so you may want to go with them, but you should always evaluate the factors and see, you know, what kind of company you have here. Some IT projects also require potential sellers to deliver a technical presentation as part of their proposal. The proposed project manager should lead the potential sales presentation team. And so for the most part, most projects, all right, before you know, if you put in an RFP, prior to it getting awarded, you know, you'll, no, not prior to, but when the contract gets awarded, all right, that particular company will come in and definitely do a presentation, making sure, um, you know, that, um, you know, the company understands what it is that we want or need and how they're going to do it, right? And so sometimes they'll do it prior to selecting a particular company because they want more clarification. They just need to see it, you know, depending again on what type of project it is that they were outsourcing and the amount of money, right? The dollar figure that we're spending on this particular project, right? Conducting procurements, steps after planning for procurement management. Decide whom to ask to do the work. Send appropriate documentation to potential sellers. Obtain proposals or bids. Select the seller, award a contract. So this is the whole contracting officer or contracting office, you know, process. Okay. And so once the contracting office gets your proposal or your requirement, they'll manufacture the RFP or RFQ, they'll send it out, and then they'll get all the information back from all the companies that are going to put a bid in for the proposal. And then we will, you know, rack and stack all the proposals or bids, right? And then based on the criteria that we already established and based on what the proposal says or the bid says that they can or can't do, we'll select a seller and then we'll award the contract, okay? They'll get a formal notification like, hey, you've been awarded the contract, you know, based on this criteria, based on what you said in the proposal, and then the relationship will be sort of in the beginning stages, and then all the paperwork and that kind of stuff needs to be signed and ready to go. And then after that, we'll have more meetings and we'll proceed on with the project. So approaches for procurement, organizations can advertise to procure goods and services in several ways. You can approach the preferred supplier. You can approach several potential suppliers and take bids, all right? So again, excuse me, depending on the contract, depending on the project, and specific for the government, depending on which pot of money it comes from, right? There's special categories where, you know, it's a company that it's a non-compete, right? Or they don't the organization that's seeking the services already has a company in mind that they want to use that maybe they've used before, or they know, you know, does the work well. And so they want to use those guys. So they will approach them and say, look, we want you to put an RFP in, a response to RFP. We're going to put one out and we'd like you to bid on a particular, you know, RFP. Maybe, you know, there's a couple of different folks out there that can do the work. We just don't know which one we're going to pick based on the price. Are they all equal as far as the quality? Or maybe they're all equal in the price and the quality is just different. So we may need to, you know, see their proposals. So we may take bids from a few, you know, two or three. It all depends, right? But there are definitely RFPs that are non-compete. And so basically, hey, you know, the company already knows who they want to pick, and they're going straight to that supplier or vendor saying, look, we have RFP out there, we need you to bid on it. And so you can pick it up. Okay. A bidders conference can help clarify expectation. Okay, meeting with prospective sellers prior to the preparation of their proposals or bids. Right. So this is kind of, you know, a sample evaluation sheet. Okay. And so it's pretty It's pretty close to, what I've seen before and what I've used before. So, again, the categories are pretty much, or the criteria is pretty much universal for the most part. But again, each company has its own little way of doing things, and its quirks, and certain approaches. So, yeah, just a general idea of, what it looks like. Seller selection. After developing a short list of possible sellers, organizations often follow a more detailed proposal evaluation process. It is customary to have contract negotiations during the source selection process. Sellers on a short list often prepare a best and final offer, and final output is a contract signed by the buyer and the selected seller. Okay. So a couple of things that go on afterwards, after you get your potential list of folks that you think you want to do the work, then you kind of get them together, and then you go back to them and say, look, you guys on the short list, is this your final offer, right? Based on what we, evaluated, and based on the other companies that you're competing with, right? You know, is is this your final offer? And then they have an opportunity to either come in lower, or maybe they have to go higher. It all depends, but usually they come in lower. But sometimes they don't do anything, right? They just kind of leave it as, hey, this is the best we got. Unless we know more about who we're competing with and what the price point is, right? Really can't really do anything else than what we've already offered based on what we know. Okay. Ensures the seller's performance meet contractual requirements. Contracts are legal relationships, so important that legal and contracting professionals be involved in writing and administering contract. Okay. So project managers are always going to work with the contracting officer, right? If there's a contract involved, right? Unless it's a boilerplate template, contract for, something that we get on a regular basis, or it's below price or cost threshold, for the most part, the project manager and the contract manager or contract officer are going to be working pretty closely to make sure everything is good to go. It's critical that project managers and team members watch for constructive change orders, okay? So you got to make sure that all written acts or omissions by someone with actual or apparent authority that can be construed to have the same effect as a written change order, right? So really it's about making sure that, any changes that occur, right, that the project manager and team members keep an eye on those things, right? Because if I award the contract to a particular, third party, and then I just kind of go away and let them do their thing, right? Yes, I'm ultimately just worried about the end product, but I need to make sure that nothing constructive changes based on the decisions they're making, right? Without consulting me first, right? If it's something that's really of substance that's going to impact the project in such a way where it's going to cost more, it's going to delay it, right? Or it's not going to meet the scope or what it is that we wanted to do. Okay. Suggestions for change control in contract. Changes to any part of the project need to be reviewed, approved, and documented by the same people in the same way that the original part of the plan was approved. Evaluation of any change should include an impact analysis. All right, that's what I was talking about again. Is it going to impact the scope, the cost, or the time? Changes must be documented in writing. Okay, project management teams should stay closely involved to make sure the new system will meet business needs and work in an operational environment. Have backup plans, use tools and techniques such as contract change control system, buyer conducted performance reviews, inspections, and audits. So buyer conducted performance reviews are interesting because that happens mid-contract, right? Where, we can give an assessment of, the contractor thus far, okay? And what we think about the service that we're getting, right? And in that case, that allows both sides to, make improvements or make changes that may lead to a more efficient and just a better product in general, okay? Closing procurements, right, involves completing and settling contracts and resolving any open items. The product team should determine if all work was completed correctly and satisfactorily. update records to reflect final results, and archive information for future use. The contract itself should include requirements for formal acceptance and closure. Okay. Best practices, right? Procurement can be more intelligent. Data scientists build predictive models to analyze big data related to finance, marketing, etc. Right. So again, here we see technology and really AI, kind of having a role in improving the process, right? So why not model procurement processes, right? Behavioral economists know that people do not act rationally, right? So when we look at, why people do certain things, how to get an edge or an advantage in negotiations, what are some of the motivation behind why companies do one thing and not do the other, okay? All those things need to be taken into account. Quality control ensures departments encourage employees to suggest quality improvements all the time. And crowdsourcing solicits ideas from a large group of people. Okay. And so crowdsourcing has become very popular in the past few years, probably in the last decade or so, right? Instance that you put the problem out there for the general public to kind of give you an idea or give you ideas on how to solve the problem, right? And so the notion is that, many brains are better than one brain, okay? So the company is considered one brain, right? But if I put it out there to the general population, there may be someone out there who doesn't work for the company who may have a very good solution to the problem, right? And so when I crowdsource, that gives them the opportunity and gives us the opportunity to one, provide a challenging dilemma, but also provides opportunity for someone to give us a, solution that we probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Right? Tools to assist in contract closure, procurement audits, identify lessons learned in procurement process. Record management system provides the ability to easily organize, find, and achieve procurement-related documents. Ideally, all procurement should end in a negotiated settlement between the buyer and the seller. If the negotiation is not possible, then some type of alternate dispute resolution, ADR as we know it, is a median or arbitration can be used. Okay, so mediation, is non-binding. Arbitration is binding. Okay, and so what we mean by that is that mediation, if you don't agree with the terms of the mediation and what what came out of it, then you don't have to adhere to those. But arbitration, whatever's decided in arbitration, that's it. There's no turning back. This is you got to follow whatever guidance that's provided during arbitration. You have to follow it. Okay. Archiving information for future use is particularly important, of course, because we want to be able to look back at some, repetitive projects or things that are repetitive in nature, maybe over 5, 10 years, we may do a certain project or thing over and over again. And it's good to be able to go back and see, okay, what, company did we use before? What was the process that we used to, to enable this contract? Was the was the project on time? What was the cost? What resource did we have, right? Things change. So, but it's still always a good thing to have an idea, okay, what did the last one look like? Or is there something similar to what, we want to do now to, something that we did before? So you want to compare and contrast, right? Use software to assist in project procurement management, right? Word processing software, spreadsheet software, database, presentation software, e-procurement software, all this stuff being used by companies in order to, really help with procurement management. And then now we have AI, that is really changing the game up when it comes to procurement and to how we manage data and how we manage processes, right? Facilitate that user experience to be a positive one for the consumer. And so, we have a lot of different resources that we use in order to make sure that we understand who we're dealing with as far as consumers. We have all the relevant information we need so that we're not constantly contacting them and trying to pull information from them. We have it all saved, and we have a secure database. And we have information or canned, I will say, when I say canned, or pre-prepared presentations or informational marketing resources or things that we can give out to potential vendors, right? Procure to Pay suite provides support for indirect procurements, right? E-purchasing functionality, catalog management capabilities, e-invoicing, and accounts payable invoice automation, right? So all these things basically are somewhat automated or, based on technology. And so we don't have to, we no longer have to, manually, manage the procurement process, right? Especially when it comes to payment, right? All that stuff is generated as soon as the activity is done, right? Boom, a bill is generated or invoice is generated, and that is sent to the company, the purchasing company, that's, whoever's paying for the services, okay? And vice versa, right? We may bill the company for something or get a credit for something, right? And so that's all done in many cases automatically or automated at this point in time. All right. You got considerations for agile adaptive environments. Okay, we have an agile manifesto, values customer collaboration over contract negotiations. Setting an important tone for procurement relationships on agile projects, okay? The buyer and seller should work together to create the required products and services throughout the entire procurement process. Another goal of agile adaptive environment is speed, right? Several procurements have to take time. Processes, project procurement management follow a clear logical sequence. Project managers and their teams must follow good project procurement management, okay? So it's important that, especially in an agile adaptive environment where we're doing sprints or we have a lot of deliverables, we have to make sure that we are in constant communication with our vendor, right? We have to make sure that we are managing the procurement process properly and understanding timelines as far as when something's going to be delivered, how it's going to be delivered, right? What the cost is, right? As compared to our budget and what we allocated, but also access to the funds, right? And be able to pay for those services as soon as possible. All right, so quick chapter summary. All right, procurement, purchasing, or outsourcing is the acquisition of goods and services from outside source. Several types of software can assist in project procurement management. Okay, let me go back here. Okay. Product procurement management includes planning procurement management and then conducting and controlling procurements. All right. And so all in all, the procurement process is something that, there's a lot of moving pieces to it. But at the end of the day, it's really just about, hey, what resources I need, identifying what resources I need, identifying, who I can get it from, how much it's going to cost, when I can get it, and what quality or what level I can get it at. Okay. And so you wrap all those things together, and you work in conjunction with the controller, the comptroller, and the contracting office or the contracting officer. And, you make those things happen. They put out the RFP or RFQ and they get bids in. And then from there, we are prioritizing the bids. And then whichever one we decide meets our needs, that's the person that gets awarded the contract. And then we move on from there. All right. So at this time, that's all we got for this week. Make sure that, you finish up your learning engagement. And I will see you in the next session.